Welcome to tonight's workshop on creating a summer writing plan, a Loudoun County Public Library program with David Hazard. I'm Lorraine Moffa, Programming Coordinator for Loudoun County Public Library and your host tonight. Feel free to use the chat feature to send me comments and questions during the program, and I can share them with David. I'm pleased to welcome your writing coach tonight. David Hazard is a veteran of the publishing world and has helped to jumpstart the careers of more than 400 authors. He is the founder of Ascent, an international coaching program for writers whose alumni have won awards in London, Paris, Boston, Chicago, and other major publishing centers. David is the author of more than 30 books, and Blood Brothers is notably published in 29 languages. So take it away, David. Welcome back. Thank you for being here with us tonight.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. I love doing these workshops, and I'm always so grateful to Loudoun County Libraries for hosting them and for all that you do to support Loudoun County writers.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Just a number of writers have come to these programs, either when I was doing them in person or online, and who are now well published and made their connection right here, and we got them jump started. So again, thanks to you guys. So I'll jump in and say that tonight's program is about creating a summer writing program, and I want to emphasize that it's about creating your own summer writing program. This is not going to be something where I hand you a grid. You may want to use one for planning, but that's up to you. I'm going to talk with you about the various aspects of what it takes to plan a good writing program. And of course, I'm also going to address the special aspect of summertime and the special challenges, as well as the special gifts that summer presents to us. So that's the nature of the program tonight. It's about creating your own summer writing program. And I want to say, secondly, by way of a little what I think of as housekeeping direction, it's possible that you've come with different questions about different aspects of writing or publishing that are not necessarily part of what I'm covering. And so I would really encourage you to write those questions down, or perhaps you already have them or they're in your head. I will leave plenty of time at the end of my presentation so that we can address a broader range of questions. In the meantime, while I'm presenting, I'll stop pretty regularly and I'll ask if there are any questions or observations. And by that, I mean, focused on the material that we're talking about at the moment. And as I said, we'll leave plenty of time at the end for questions that aren't addressed by the presentation itself. So first and foremost, thank you for being here, giving your time and attention to this. I'm making the assumption that we have people who are interested in writing books, interested in writing for publication. Since that's my field of expertise, I've been involved in the publishing world since for 42 years. I always like to say I started when I was 4. That was the laugh line. Anyway, I've been involved in publishing for these many years. And so that's my focus, is wanting to help people focus their intention, focus their energy with an eye toward working on material that is publishable, that can carry your thoughts and your dreams and your words out to an audience. And so that'll be the general tenor behind pretty much everything that I say tonight. So let me jump in, and I'm going to give you an overview of the different subtopics that I'm going to be talking about. So stick around if your particular area of interest doesn't come up first, but I will get around to it. So the overview of what I'm going to be talking about tonight is focusing your content. There's a lot to be said about that, but that's an area of great importance when you're planning a writing program. Then I want to talk about what I call opening the space-time continuum. And that's all about locating the place and the time that you're going to write. And there's more to it than just that little tagline implies. So we'll talk about that. Thirdly, I want to talk about the importance of what I call, once you've got a plan and you've got space and time, what I call placing the rock in the river, setting appointments, setting intentions, setting your priorities. We know that this time of year, there's so much that can distract us and pull us outside and pull us away. And then fourthly, I want to talk about protecting your time, because we have forces within us that are, luring us to do other things, maybe. But we also have people who want and projects that want our attention. So I want to talk about those things. And along the way, I'll at the end of each one of these sections, I'll give you some pointers, some coaching pointers as to what you need to be able to effectively use that aspect of a writing program. So as I said, I want to start first with the area of focusing your content. Now, it's going to seem counterintuitive that I start out by saying that maybe your summer program actually starts out with you doing more exploring than actually coming to a point where you've made a definitive decision about what you want to write about. I find that, in my years of coaching people, I've worked with authors who were absolutely sure they were ready to go, and we started into a coaching program only to get a couple of months in or 6 months in and have them say, I really don't have the focus and the energy for this. I really don't. I thought I did, but I really didn't explore it. And it could be that they just don't have the motivation, the real motivation to write on that particular topic. It could be that they haven't really done the time to do the research and reading that really needs to go into writing a good book. So it could be that summer is a time for letting yourself explore. And as I said, taking the time to draft some material, not making a huge commitment to, this is the novel, this is the memoir, this is the book that I have to write, I'm going to write. I say that, better to take some time and draft a few pages, 20 pages, even 30 pages, and see if the fire really catches for you. Better to do that than make a huge commitment and get 100 and 125, 150 pages in and just say, I'm not even sure why I'm doing this. I don't have that affinity. I don't have that connection. So again, take some time to explore. Now, I'm saying that in particular to people who are just kind of reaching around trying to find the important concept for them. But I also want to include people who have already decided and you really already know what your concept is. Any time is a good time to tap the brakes, hit the pause button, and take the time to delve into material that can really inform what you're writing. Whether that's taking the time to read in an interest area. Lorraine and I were chatting just before this started, and right now I'm reading a lot of books in the area of nature and the natural world and connections, and that has to do that's feeding into a big project that I'm working on, a 5-novel series, and it keeps my mind moving in the same vein. It opens up ideas. Keeps me, as I said, keeps me connected to my material. And the reason I'm recommending this to people who have already decided what their concept is because what I get and what agents and publishers get a lot are manuscripts that are what we might call thin soup. And by that, you can tell right away who's really absorbed their subject, who knows their subject area, who has taken the time. So it may be that you need to explore, as I said, your content area. It may be that you need to take time and really explore your characters better. sometimes characters come across as not very well developed. Like we really don't know or don't understand this character. So it could be that, you know, hitting the pause button, part of your writing program this summer, is to stop and do character sketches. And I want to just add a note about developing good characters. A little side comment here. Characters interest us if they're not monochromatic. Oftentimes, you know, we'll get a character, you know, they're so good, a character who's so evil, so arch, and it's sort of stick figure writing. And people have dimension. And so it would be important to maybe stop and think through not only content, is my content worthy, is my content strong, but what about my characters? Maybe I need to stop and spend some time exploring. And so, of course, this would be both for people who know where they're going, as well as people who are trying to figure it out. So the next thing that I want to talk about, other than beyond focusing and exploration, is the idea of really being clear about what your concept is. What's your concept for your book? You know, is it clear? You've probably heard the famous term, the elevator speech. And what that means is that in terms of presenting your book to anybody really, let alone to an agent or a publisher, you want to be able to give them a 3-sentence handle on what your book is about. And it ought to be crisp enough and clear enough in your mind at some point, either before you begin or very shortly after you begin. What's the story? What's the main plot of the story? Can I say that in 1 sentence? Is there a theme? Is there some message, some takeaway that I want the readers to have? Can I say that in a sentence? It's that kind of thing is important, not only at the back end when you're going to present your project. It's important because it keeps you honest, it keeps you linear, keeps you focused. And this should come after you've done your explorations. At some point, you really need to be able to settle in and say, I know what this book is about, you know, where the plot is going. I may not know all the twists and turns yet, but I've got the story arc. Excuse me. I understand the main characters and where they're going, understand the character arcs. And, you know, notice that I'm also saying, you know, that, you know, this leaves room for you to explore, to move around within those arcs. But without that sort of directionality, you're writing waffles and you can get lost and very quickly lose interest, because you can say, I thought I knew where the story was going. I thought I knew what I was going to do with these characters, but I don't. And I'm sort of lost here. So that's part of your planning this summer. Could be part of your planning, is really taking the time to understand your own book. And then third, thinking through very clearly, who is your audience? Who are you writing to? Audiences have very clear sense of topics and subject matter and characters that they vibe with, they're connected to. And if you're unclear, you know, who are these people? Why would people out there want to pick up my book? And it comes down to what the question is, what's in it for them? What's in it for your reader? If you're saying that you want to write a mystery, then you need to produce a good mystery, because that's, you know, there are mystery readers out there, and that's what they're looking for. They want their attention grabbed. They want to be able to put together a puzzle, and that's of great interest to them. Again, talking with Lorraine, you know, beforehand, she was telling me that she's reading, has been reading lately some books in particular about women and their involvement in World War II, and the the difference, the great difference that that women made in the war effort. And there was something about that vibed with her, and she said it just interests her. So it's important to think through, as I said, what is the value to your audience? It's information, it's entertainment, it's escape. It's wanting pages to turn, wanting some kind of a pot boiler because I want to sit down somewhere and I want to, your reader wants to sit down and get lost in a good page turning story. So take the time to think through who those people are and what it is that they're going to be coming to your book for. So those are some of the basics in the pre-thinking. And then I want to talk about, still staying under this heading of focusing, storyboarding and outlining. Taking the time to create a storyboard if you're working on a novel or a memoir. Taking the time to outline if what you're writing. I've been speaking a lot about fiction. Taking the time to outline if you're writing a good nonfiction book. I would have to say, of all of the important tasks to creating, good writing, this is the one that probably 80 to 90% of the writers I work with want to skip over. It's they're impatient to get going, they're eager, they're excited, but then again, as I said, without a map, this is what a storyboard and an outline does for you. It helps you create a map. It helps you organize your thoughts, organize your story. It helps you decide, where am I going to place certain information? How am I going to have, where are my breaks in my story? My important turning points going to happen. It is. I would have to say it's sort of like the flu of writers to not want to do storyboards and outlines. It's just they don't like it. Mostly they are impatient about it. And then they get in and they're like, well, geez, I wish I had said this sooner in the story. Now I've got to go back and revise. And they wind up losing a lot of time and losing momentum and energy. And so summer can be a time where you spend really, disciplining yourself. I'll use that word that we don't like, the D word, and taking the time to create a storyboard with a good story arc to it, or an outline where you really understand the flow of your, say, nonfiction book. What you're doing is you're giving yourself a map. You are creating a good map so that when you're done, you can step back and you've got a 10,000-foot view of what your book is going to look like and how it's going to flow. It's also adjustable. It's not like one of the things that I run into is writers saying, oh, but I just want the creative mind to take over. And the problem with the creative mind is it just butterflies all over the place. And again, without a commitment to a storyboard and a map, you can get lost and you can lose interest. The story can segue and become something else, way different than what you thought you were starting out to do. And it's it's sort of a Frankenstein monster. It's a whole bunch of ideas that your creative mind is just throwing together, and they may or may not work. So a storyboard or an outline, I said it's a map. It gives you efficiency. It gives you efficiency as a writer. You can follow the path. You can sit down and decide, which scenes, which chapters you're going to work on. And at the end of the day or a writing session, you can cross it off and say, I did that. I can see my accomplishment. It also, I said efficiency, but it also gives you a sense of accomplishment. So that can be part of your summer. I'm going to tip my hat and tell you that what I'm talking to you about is pre-writing. Pre-writing is writing. Pre-writing is writing. And that's just a a maxim that I live by as a writer, and I encourage my writers to live by, because it's the roots. It's what gives life and energy and structure and power to your writing. And the last thing I want to mention about under focusing is this will segue into talking about setting up a writing space and a writing time. But if you do nothing else, from this section that I'm talking with you about, take the time to find good writing prompts. If you've been around writing circles for any amount of time, you've heard the term prompts. And they could be pictures, they could be knickknacks, they could be mementos, objects, anything that sparks your imagination toward the story that you want to write. I brought a couple down from my writing room here in my home. I have taken over a bedroom now that I'm on my own, and all 3 kids are out and employed and married, and yay! So I've got a whole little bedroom that I took over for my writing room. And one of the, without going into great detail, in this novel series that I'm working on, one of the characters is a Tibetan yogi, a young Tibetan yogi who's had to escape from Tibet and is now living in the mountains of upstate New York. And there's an object from the Tibetan Buddhism, an object that's used in their ceremonies that's called a phurba, and it's a ceremonial dagger. And so I wanted to have this as a prompt. And so I hopped online and I found this beautiful ceremonial dagger called a phurba. The blade is actually carved from quartz crystal, as is the little hilt up here. There are turquoise on it. There's a head that is a dragon head. The dragon in Eastern spirituality is all about life energy. This phurba plays an important role at different points throughout this novel. And I thought, I want one. I want one here in my writing room. And I sometimes keep it right beside me, right on my computer stand as I'm writing. And it keeps me focused. There's something about having an object that you can meditate on, and you stop and think, well, how would the character's name is Sam? How would Sam use this? When would he use it? What would he use it for? And in that meditating and that bringing my mind back to an object like this, ideas pop out. And so having something like this that helps to anchor the creative mind and really sort of draw out of you ideas is important. I've got another object here. If there's anybody here that is of the Catholic faith, I was raised in a Catholic home, and this is what is called a scapular, and it's given to you. I think it was given to me at my first communion, maybe my confirmation class. But there's a picture on it of the Archangel Michael defeating the dragon Satan. And this scapular figures into the story, or a scapular. And it just occurred to me that I wanted to have this as a meditation object, not in the religious sense, but in the creative sense, to say, this is going to spark some ideas. So every day I walk into my writing room and I see those 2 objects. And if there's a part in the story where I think I need something to happen here, and I look around it, and there are other objects besides these 2, they spark creativity. Other prompts can be pictures. You may have a real place that you're writing about. Find pictures of that place and post them around your writing space. So that the idea is to be able to step into your writing space and as quickly as possible get your mind to focus. It's harder to get your mind to focus and become creative if you're in a blank space. For some people that really works. Other people find that I think of this as sort of like, pouring water into one of those old well pumps. I don't know if you've ever used one of those, but you got to pump the handle. and it helps to prime that pump with water, with a couple cups full of water. This to me is about priming the creative well pump. And lots and lots of great creative benefit comes out of that. So other things that I use, I think I mentioned pictures. This might not be quite as visible. This is actually just a test book because I wanted to see how my books would print out because we use some really good graphics. And so I hope this will show up because this didn't work out very well. Let me see if I can show you a picture of Claire.
That works, David.
Yeah, so
We can see this.
one of my main characters is a young woman named Claire, and she has a very moving sort of backstory. But she's also in some ways very wounded. She's wounded in the area of trust. She doesn't, I would say that her truster is broken, so that she doesn't even want to open up and trust people anymore. And I thought, you know, there's a certain look in the eyes of somebody who's wary or who is just kind of a flatness. And I took the time to look through magazines for a month or two, and all of a sudden flipping through, I saw an ad and I went, oh my gosh, that's Claire. That's got the look, that conveys this. And so I cut that out and you know, put that on the wall in my writing room. And she's one among many characters in these novels, but I know her now because I spend days walking in and I see her picture, and over time, her story and her personality have filled in because I visit with that image, you know, as often as I can. So picture prompts. We could go on and on about different types of prompts that you can use. I've just mentioned objects, pictures. For some people, it's sound. Because I'm again working on books that are set in a wilderness area, I have nature sounds that I've downloaded into my iTunes program on this particular computer. So while I'm working, I turn on nature sounds, and there's something about it that transports me. So as I said, I'm spending a lot of time on this because to me, doing this work is really foundational to pretty much everything else you're going to do. It brings depth, it brings understanding, it brings connection with your material. As I said from the very beginning, if you're reading in this area, if you're absorbing material, if you're setting up an atmosphere and pictures and prompts, you're going to be able to step into your writing whenever you do. If it's a week from now, a month from now, or this fall, this is all a hugely important part of the pre-writing of a book. And as I said, you know, pre-writing is writing. Pre-writing is writing. You know, as I said, I wanted to also give you something that you'll need or you could use. And so at this point, you know, I mentioned the idea of, you know, creating storyboards or creating outlines. And so I want to mention a book that you can find in the libraries, and it is called Master Plots. Master Plots. There are story outlines or story flows. I hate to call them outlines because they're really, they're lines. They're ways that the energy of a story rises and falls or moves in different directions. And these storylines occur in almost every story that you can find. If you strip away all the surface and get down to what I think is the understructure of a story, the inner geography of a story, you'll find that one of these master plot outlines or one of these master plot outlines is there. So that's something that you can explore, and it can also help you. It can also be a prompt. It can help to focus you. So that's this is the first area that I wanted to cover about focusing. And before I move on to the other areas that I mentioned at the outset, I'd like to stop and see if anybody has any questions, contributions, thoughts. Go.
Any questions, anyone so far? Feel free to type them in the chat or let me know that you'd like to speak to David directly and I can unmute your microphone. I don't think there's any.
Okay. If you think of something, go ahead and excuse me, type it in the chat box, and Lorraine can stop me and we'll address your question or your thought. Excuse me, I'm having trouble clearing my throat. Give me 1 second. It's past pollen season. I don't know what's going on. The second area that I want you to think about in terms of setting up your summer writing program, maybe you're really ready to go. And, as I said, you've done all the exploration, got your prompts, or you're going to grab them pretty quickly. It's really addressing the issue of, what I think of as the space-time continuum. Part of a good program is having a set space that you know you're going to go to, and everything that you need is there and ready. If you want a good exercise program, you know that you're going to go to a gym and all the equipment is going to be there. If you do yoga, you want to go to a yoga studio where there are mats and et cetera, et cetera. Everything is set up there so that when you walk into a space, you're ready to do the activity that you went there for. So similarly, I encourage writers to have a good set space, If you're fortunate enough to have a room in your home, as I do, some people find a little room and clear it out because it's become a junk room. In my case, somebody moved out and I took over what was their bedroom. And but the importance of having a space is that, as I said, you have some place to go where everything you need is there. Sometimes I've worked with people who said, I live in such a small apartment, it's like an efficiency. And so we come up with other ways for them to have that creative space. They don't necessarily have wall space to put up a big storyboard. And so for people like that, I say, well, let's go miniature. Let's get a spiral notebook that opens up, and you can create your storyboard or your outline on that, and can actually become a portable storyboard. Maybe in that notebook, spiral bound notebook, you can also include your prompt pictures, so that it's minimized. It takes up minimal space, and also it's transportable. And the reason, yeah.
Excuse me, someone's asking, do you use word processing software for storyboarding or special software?
I don't actually. I'll back up and talk about that. I'm very hands-on. I'm very old school. I know there is storyboarding software. Some of my authors just work with spreadsheets, and I get boggled by boxes. It feels too cramped for me. I do my own storyboarding where I set up. I get these big sheets of paper that you can buy. They're big pads of paper that you can buy at Staples or Office Depot. They're about 2.5 feet by 3 feet, and you can tear them off. And I use painter's tape to tape them up on the wall so it doesn't rip the paint off. And I storyboard using 3M sticky notes. Because in terms of storyboarding, remember, what you want to do is not just write down something general like, in this chapter, XYZ happens. You want to get as granular as you possibly can. So by using little notes like that, I can say, in this incident, so-and-so and so-and-so meet and confront each other, and this is the outcome. This is how the story moves on. So I build out my storyboard that way. And to me, and I know you can move around, computer, you can jump into a computer program and move your writing around. But this to me gives me sort of a hands-on with my writing, with my creativity. And if I don't like something, I can tear it up and write another sticky note and replace it with something better, the better idea. So that's how I work. Probably pretty old school, but I am old school.
Thanks, David.
Sure. Okay. And again, if you have any other questions along these lines, please give a shout out online. So set space. Now, even as I'm talking about set space, summer is a time when we're likely to move around. Maybe you're planning to go to the beach, planning to go to the mountains, planning to go to a secluded cabin somewhere. Whatever maybe you're hoping to do some kind of a getaway, whatever a getaway is to you. Doesn't work so well if you're trying to cram writing into a full schedule. Like, yeah, I've had people say to me, well, I'm going on a cruise, but I'm going to write on that cruise. And I say, no, you're not. It's just, let's be realistic here. You're on a cruise, enjoy the cruise. I'm talking about a real creative getaway where you know that you're planning to be in a different space, but you can plan a schedule, plan for the time. So again, if you've got something that's transportable, whether it's something that you've got in your laptop, like a program, or a notebook, such as I've suggested with your storyboard or outline in it, you might plan for that and say, even if you only take the notes for 1 or 2 chapters, because you're only going to be away a certain time, you're certainly not going to pound out a whole book. But you can take elements with you, and then you have brought your prompts with you and your storyboard with you. But a set space and set times. Take the time, if you don't know already, take the time to know what your high energy focus times are. There are people who are night owls. I don't understand you people. The people who can start writing at 9 o'clock at night and go till 1 in the morning, or start at 10 or 11 and write through the night. I'm definitely a morning person. I'm usually awake by 4 or 5, and if I can get rolling, jump into my writing space and my time, and then I can catch that energy wave and I can ride till noon or 1. But after that, I have to turn my energies to other things because the creative wave has petered out. So it's knowing your own best times as a good way to understand, to create your writing program. Trying to force yourself to write when you're tired, it's diminishing returns, and pretty soon you find yourself frustrated and thinking, why am I trying to do this? I can't do it. It may be that your best writing time, you have to make some rearrangements in your schedule to open up your schedule to allow your creative energy to flow at a time when maybe something else could be demanding your attention. And that could just take a little bit of schedule rearranging to take care of that. So what's your best energy time? And then, getting into your head the notion that if this is a project that you are committed to and focused, and you really want to get this project done, I like to use the image of, dropping the rock in the river. And by that, I mean, if you say, this is my space, this is my best time, and I'm going to be there and I'm going to commit myself to writing during that time, then, the river has to flow around the rock. And by an example of that is somebody calls you and says, hey, I want to get together, you're a morning person, and hey, I'd really like to get together for coffee. And you sort of spontaneously forget that you had a commitment to writing. You just let the river wash the rock away. If you say to your friend, gosh, I'd love to get together with you. How about, can we schedule another time? This is my writing time. Over the years of coaching, I've had people tell me I really couldn't get to the writing because I had to take the dog to the groomers. I had to go get a haircut. I had to, I needed to go to the southern states and pick up grass seed. It's like southern states is open till 7 o'clock at night. So it's putting that, it's a firmness, it's an intentionality, it's setting that this is when my program is going to happen, and I'm going to be there. I'm going to commit to it. So in order to do this, I said, all you really need, besides the commitment and the setting boundaries, is you need a space and you need a calendar. This is where that function inside of us that's called the executive function, this is where that comes in. It's where you stop and you organize your life. You organize your week, your days. And I've mentioned this before in other workshops that I've given, that I sit down every Sunday morning and I have an executive meeting with myself, because I've got a coaching business, I'm working on a novel series, I'm launching a teaching product, downloadable teaching product, and all of that's got to get done sometime. And so I have to sit down and drop the different rocks in the river, and then the river has to flow around it, and other things that come up have to wait or be rescheduled or let go. So use the executive function to help create your writing program. And I think that we especially need this during the summer, when there's so much calling us outside, from maybe yard work to getting together with friends, people who want to hike, people who want to kayak, people who just want to get together and hang out. And yeah, there's a lot to lure us away from our commitment to our work. And so dropping the rock in the river is really important if you're going to enjoy your own program and get your work done. So I'll stop with that at the end of that segment and see if anybody has any thoughts or questions or observations.
Any questions or comments for David? Just put them in the chat box, or let me know you'd like to be unmuted. You can ask your question directly. What's been your most difficult day of writing?
Boy, how many do you want to know about? I want to talk about what I call cold start days. Those are days when you wake up and maybe you don't feel that good. Maybe you're tired, maybe you're cranky, your energy is low. I've had some neck and spinal injuries, so I can wake up in the morning and have a splitting headache and think, oh, I don't want to write today. Or just flat affect, just not feeling it. If I gave into those days, I barely write. They're pretty frequent. So not my worst days, but they're chronic sort of flat days. And what I do then is I start out and I have this little mind trick that I do with myself. And I say, okay, I'm probably not going to write today. But if I were going to write, what would I write about? What scene would I pick? What part of it has to be specific. And say, okay, this is a scene where this particular character goes with the wildlife veterinarian out into the woods to rescue baby bear cubs. Their mother has been slaughtered, and somebody has found these baby. Okay, so if I were going to write, I would write about that. It's like, well, what would the setting be? And so I start, all right, I just start, drafting the setting. Here's the trailhead, and here's what the day would feel like. It would be hot and humid, and they'd be swatting black flies up in the woods. And then, what would some of their conversation be like as they're walking? It's a 3-mile hike into the woods. What would their conversation be like? So I sort of tease myself. I think of it as sort of walking in at the shallow end of the pool. And even if I don't, sometimes that just jump starts my writing. The next thing I know, I'm laughing at myself because I knew what I was doing. I was tricking myself into starting writing. But it works. And if it doesn't, jumpstart the actual writing, then I've got notes for the next day when I wake up and go, yeah, all right, I'm ready, let's go. You know, I've already got a roughed out draft of where I want this scene to go. And I would say probably a worse day of writing would be finishing a chapter and somehow having the chapter be lost or erased and not recoverable.
Oh, that's a nightmare.
Yes, yeah.
That hasn't happened, has it?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Oh,
oh yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
that hurts.
you start thinking about what's the closest high bridge I can go jump off of.
Oh my
It's like,
goodness.
because you know, especially if you finish something, you go, oh, I did it. And
Right.
you know, it's like having a house fire and you just in your all of your last painted masterpiece just burned up in the fire. There's no
And you can't recall it. You can't. No.
no. So you know, you do things like you know, take a deep breath, go for a walk. What you don't do is grind your heel into yourself. You know, to just keep, you know, stomping around all day and complaining and, oh, you know, just whining and complaining about it. It's gone. It's done. That moment's over.
Yeah.
And you go back to your notes and you say, you know what, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to try to recreate it. It might not be as good as what I wrote. Sometimes amazing things come back, you know, out of a 25-page chapter, and you think, oh my gosh, I remember that now almost word for word. Sometimes something better comes.
That's true too. Takes a
Yeah,
different direction.
yeah, yeah. Just
What would be your recommendation for storyboarding when working with another writer?
working with another writer, I'll say initially can be really tricky. Uh, there's a lot of, you know, interpersonal issues. That's probably a negative way to start it. You know, we all have different character traits, and especially if you get two creative people together, it can be the, you know, two horses pulling a wagon, but pulling in slightly different directions. I would say again, you know, working on getting concept solid, work on you know, getting characters solid and who your audience is, what you want the book to do, and then have frequent brainstorming sessions. You know, take the time to hammer things out verbally before somebody says, well, let me just go ahead and draft this and then you can have a look at it. That's kind of a formula for a fist fight, because somebody can say, oh my gosh, I wrote this, I think it's one of the best scenes I wrote, and you shrug and say, I don't get it, you know, or it doesn't do anything for the story. So take the time up front to really talk things through and come to some kind of agreement as to each piece of the book that you're writing. And then another thing that you can do is have somebody whose opinion you respect, not just because, you know, you like them and they're a wise person, but because they have maybe more experience, editorial experience than you, who, if you have to submit different drafts of a manuscript and say, what do you think? They might have a way to blend your two ideas. They might come away and say, you know, this idea just really honestly works better. And here's why. They should be able to tell you why objectively. Why. So I would say, you know, those elements can help a writing team stick together, stay together, and produce good copy.
Okay. And is it a good idea to write storyboard scenes out of order?
Oh, I think, gosh, out of a 5-novel series, I've got the last scene of the whole 5 novels written. I've got scenes that appear in novels 3 and 4 and 5 written. I've got the storyboard done, but it might be for whatever reason on a given day. I'm looking at my notes or looking at, you know, storyboards on my walls, and for whatever reason, I just zero in and I go, I want to write that today. That excites me. That interests me. Yeah, so as long as you have a system for keeping track of where a particular scene goes, so you don't wind up, bollocksed up. I don't think there isn't anything wrong with that. What you might find when you finally get there to place that scene into your story, it might need some refinement, it might need some adjustment, to actually fit in well with the storyline. But in and of itself, write the scenes. If a scene has great energy for you, do it.
Okay, that's all the questions for now, David.
Okay. So I want to get back to talking about the third part of what I wanted to speak about tonight was once you've set your appointments, you've done the set the rock in the river. Be good about setting realistic goals for yourself. Set realistic goals for those writing periods. It's all about finding your pace. I have writers who hire me to coach them, and they take a look at the 14-month coaching program. They're like, oh, I can get my book done in 3 or 4 months. And I said, well, it's possible. That might be, you might be the person who comes in at the head of the pack of the marathon. But let's see. Let's get out there on the course, so to speak, and see what your real writing pace is. And keeping in mind, again, of stepping away from this idea of setting realistic goals, to say you want to give yourself the leeway to write a rough draft and then go back and do your refinements, right? Give yourself the leeway to write a rough draft and then go back and do your refinements. Only really, really experienced writers sit down and pull off a great first draft, or maybe you do occasionally, and other times, some days you will, some days you won't. So in order to set realistic goals, I always encourage writers to say, okay, you've got your space, you've got your time, you've set your appointment with yourself. Set realistic goals, meaning you look at your storyboard and you think, wow, I'm got energy, I'm up, I'm going to write 3 big scenes today. I've got X number of hours, and I know I can get 3 scenes done. And then you get in, and for whatever reason, you get caught up in scene number 1, and you only get partway through scene number 2. There can be a voice in the back of your head that says, oh, you didn't do it. You didn't reach your goal. We don't need that voice. We don't need any kind of negative voices in our heads when we're trying to create. Even a voice that just says, oh, you keep setting these goals, but you can't reach them. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? You should be able to do better. Set what I think of as your type A goal, which is that charged up, jacked up, I'm going to get in and I'm going to write this much. But also set a type B goal, which is, I really think I could do whatever, 3 scenes today. But if I only get 1 or 1.5 done, that's going to be okay too. When you're writing, when you're alone, you have to be self-rewarding. You have to be self-rewarding because there's nobody else there to pat you on the back, keep you motivated, keep you energized. So do that, set a type B goal. And then I always encourage the people I'm working with to set a type C goal. And that is, you've had your executive appointment with yourself, you've set up your writing schedule, and you come to a week or a few days in a row where you really, really, life intervenes and you really, really cannot write. You just can't get to it. And again, it's the potential is to face a lot of frustration, a lot of voices inside that say, oh, what did you bother doing that for? You might as well give up. You can't even live up. Look, you set up all this and you can't. No negativity. Negative energy has to go out. It can't be a part of your writing program ever. And so on days when when I look at, yes, I've got this carefully set up week and the universe has conspired to come in and stomp all over my schedule. My type C goal is I go in my writing room and I just look at my storyboard. If it's 5 or 10 minutes a day, I stop, I look at my characters, I look at the place on the storyboard where I'm going to be writing next, and I just read it. And I go, yep, that's where I'm going to pick up again as soon as I can get back in here. I just refuse to tolerate frustration in my life. So notice in yourself, part of a good practice, if you're a writer, is to have this objective self that notices things like voices of frustration, voices of criticism, voices of judgment, the naysayers, because sometimes our biggest enemies are right inside our own head. And often, again, this is probably something I run into with 80 to 90% of my authors. You know, as adults, we're really kind of still like big kids when it comes to frustration. We can't tolerate our own frustration. You know, oh, I try to do that. It just makes me so frustrated. I'll just give up. And I'll be the first to admit, for example, technology frustrates me. And fortunately, I've got some people around me who let me squawk and squabble. Like, remember how Donald Duck used to, and they just listen to me. They go, okay, David, we'll help you. We'll help you work through whatever your technological issues are. So I understand that frustration, but you have to keep going. You have to push through that. So setting realistic goals is hugely important to having a good writing program and keeping it going. So what you'll need, remember I said I'll tell you what you need. What you need is, number one, a good inner watchman, a good alert, awake, interior observer to catch yourself, to catch what's going on inside of you if the negative voices show up, if the frustrated energy starts rising. Because that observer is the one that can say, wait, stop, we're not giving into this. This is, you know, we're not going to let this tear down our writing program here. And then parallel with that, so if you've got a good inner observer on your team, it also helps to have an exterior team, a team of people who know that this is protected time, this is protected space, and you let them know, hey, guys, I'm working on a book now, and I'm going to be writing X mornings or X evenings this week, and I would appreciate it if you'd help me protect that time, because, you know, don't call me during that time, you know, don't just drop in. Don't, you know, if it's children of any age, I'd appreciate it if you'd not stop in and ask me to help you make a sandwich during that time, because I need you to help me. I need you to be on my team and help me protect this time and space. So that's what you need to help you maintain a good appointment schedule and be productive during it in some measure, A, B, or C. Any questions, any thoughts?
Any questions out there? I don't think anything yet, David, but if one comes in, I'll interrupt you as nicely as I can.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Jump in anytime. So I want to circle all the way back to the beginning and talk about, just touch again before I finish and open up to a broader range of questions. I don't think I can emphasize too much the importance of focusing your concept and your content. As I said, the impatience, or call it eagerness to get started, it feels good, it's exciting, but often it's like, you know, we get these experiences in our head, we get these great creative ideas, and we get the epiphany moment and the aha and the excitement, and this is what I want to work on, and you've shared your idea with people and they're like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea, go do that. And the beginning of a writing project, you know, when you've got that initial excitement, it's sort of like, you know, putting a big pile of gunpowder on the ground and throwing a match on it, and it sparks and it's exciting, but it will burn out. It will burn out. And the thing that carries you forward is, if you take that same gunpowder and you rifle it, you put it in a beautiful skyrocket, and that's all the colors are planned. Then it's effective. It's not just, it isn't spent in the initial excitement. It helps you to know your content and know your direction, helps you to keep focused, keep rifled, if you will. I hate to use that term in some ways, but I think you get my meaning metaphorically, that it's directed energy, not just spent energy. Yeah, if you have any other questions on this subject, that's fine. I may have some broader comments to make, but also, as I said, I'd like to open up this last 20 minutes or so to any other publishing questions you might have about agents, contracts, publishers, self-publishing, social media, anything else in this general area of writing and publishing.
What is the best time to self-publish?
The best time to
Like
self-publish.
in terms of the year.
Terms of the year. Well, let me say that in general, the book selling industry, it's been a pretty steady truism that the most books sell between Halloween and Christmas. People are not only buying books for themselves, they're thinking about buying gifts for other people. So, in terms of the bubble of the year, book buying tends to spike a little bit during that time of year. But let me say this about self-publishing. There's a misnomer that if you self-publish, you're going to put your book out there, and you immediately, and the expectation is, you put the book out and you stand there and you look around and you say, where is everybody? Any publishing program is about finding and building your audience over time, finding and building your audience over time. There are books that became New York Times bestsellers that were on the market for 4 years. And it took a while for the publishers, in this case, commercial publishers, to locate the audience and let that audience for that book know the book is out there, and set up the right publishing program. So in that sense, there is no best time of year to publish. There is a mindset that you are going to go out and you're going to launch a book, and maybe in the first few weeks or months, your friends and family are going to find it, buy it. And then after that, you have to know what you're going to do after that so that you're not standing there hearing crickets. So what you do is you stop, and this comes back to the concept of audience. What does this audience value? What's important to them? And then you think about, where would that particular audience be who's looking for this kind of book? So a couple of examples I've used before. I worked with a guy who was a Cobra helicopter pilot in Iraq. This is a true story. After Action, written by Dan Sheehan, a post-combat memoir. And Dan came back from combat with a case of PTSD. And so we focused the story for combat veterans and their families and friends, people who care about them. And Dan told the story about how he resisted, how he developed PTSD, and then how he resisted getting help, because that's a piece of the warrior psyche. So we got the book done and the product done, and it took us about immediately groups like, we thought, okay, there are groups like Wounded Warriors. There's a group called Healing Waters that takes post-combat veterans fishing, fly fishing, well, we kept on looking and searching, and the Marine Corps was the big obvious pool, the big obvious market, since Dan was a Marine. And eventually, just by continuing to work on contacts, eventually somebody put the book in the hands of the wife of the commandant of the Marine Corps. And she read it. And when the wife turned to her husband and said, "You have to read this book. You have to read this book." And the commandant read it, and he put it on his recommended reading list for all Marines. That took us years to get to that point, and now, of course, the sales are moving briskly, as you can imagine. So it isn't just about having a time or a timing. It's about what do you do after you get the book out there. It's about exploring and finding the organizations and the people who might endorse your book, the people who might give it a great review. Think about it as a building effort that, we'd love to put a book out and see the sales go, off into outer space. More likely for most of us, I'm putting out a series and I'm expecting it to be pretty low for a while, maybe a little spike in the beginning, but it's going to take me a while to find the markets and the audience. And maybe by year 2 and 3, after I've done some market exploration, I'll find where the market is. And the market is where people are going to look for this kind of content. So to get specific, think about looking at podcasts. Think about looking at who's got online newsletters, who's writing commentary about this particular subject matter. That's where other people are already going to listen to somebody. And when that somebody or that organization picks up your book and sponsors it or writes about it or has you write an article, then you can begin to watch the sales begin to move.
Oh, are there ways you recommend making publishing connections and getting your art out there for people to see, like writing groups, conferences, etc.?
Yeah, I think that there are writers' conferences that you can go to, and you can schedule appointments in advance. Of course, they'll let you know who's there, and you sit down with somebody. Now, you've only got, I think they're like 15 or 20-minute appointments. So this is where your elevator pitch comes in. You really have to have your act together in knowing all the things that I've just talked about. How can I present my book in 3 or 4 sentences? What are the audience hooks? Who's the audience? And even if you can sit down and say, I know that people who are reading, I've got an author who writes cozy mysteries. And, she can go to she doesn't have to go to a writer's conference. She's got a 10-book contract right now. But before, she could sit down and say, because I coached her to do this, here are the groups that, online that talk about cozy mysteries. Here are book clubs that focus on them. And see, that gives it makes your contact with somebody in the publishing industry effective, because they are thinking about good content, but they're as much or more, they're thinking about, where am I going to sell this? Who's going to buy this? So whereas we go in, our books are our babies. I held up my baby for you and showed you a picture in it. We want to go in and we're content people. We want to just, go on and on and on about the exciting aspects of our story. And we're thinking that we're interesting the other person and we're actually distancing them. We're saying too much and we're not saying the right things. So I would recommend that if you're going to either a writer's conference or going to their websites online where you can post your ideas, and then agents will contact you because they say, hey, that's really an interesting idea. If you want to make that effective, you need to have that kind of focus that I've been talking about, because those are the seeds of publishing. A tight presentation, who the audience is, and where they're already looking for books like this.
Okay, that's it for now, David.
All right. Well, I hope this was helpful. As I said, this is the best way that I know, after 42 years of coaching and more than that of writing, to really create a good program for yourself that is effective and keeps you moving in a productive way. If you have other questions, other questions that arise, please feel free to send me an email. I think Lorraine will go ahead and type it in the chat box as we've done before. And it is Exangelos, EXANGELOS, Exangelos @AOL.com. Feel free to shoot me questions that arise later, tomorrow, a week from now, and I'll be happy to try to answer as best I can.
Thank you, David. That was wonderful as always. Really appreciate your help. Anybody have any more questions before we sign off? Going once, going twice. Last opportunity. We have a published writer here to ask advice. So, yeah. All right. David, do we have something else on? We do. We have another program with David coming up. I'm sorry, I don't have that ready to go. Hold on one second. In August, on August 26th at 6:30, David's going to do this should be fascinating, a writing workshop on inside news from the publishing world. So definitely tune into that. And then starting in the fall, David will be back in the branches doing some hands-on programs. So keep your eyes on the calendar for that coming up also. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time. Oh, one more question. What is the pressure to finish sequels to books like?
Oh, what is the pressure like? Yeah, I think, if it could come from two directions. You could have an audience that is so excited about your book that they're saying, where's book number 2 or where's book number 3? In which case you would want to keep contact with them either on social media or email or both. So you let them know what the progress is. It just kind of reminds them, hey, you said you were interested and here's where I am with the manuscript. From a publishing company, there could be, I can't say, in a quantifiable way. In general, publishers want to get a sequel out, usually within the next publishing year. If you go beyond a year into a year and a half or 2 years, and of course, there are very popular series that have dragged, and people say, wait a minute, where's the last book in the series? But they're so jacked up and so excited that the author can take their time and get the book done the way they want. In general, again, as I said, publishers will say, to keep audience interest going, you either need to have a sequel prepared and ready to hand in to us within the next publishing year, or you need to stay in touch with your audience so that you keep the jet burning.
That's pretty quick, a year turnaround. Yeah.
It is, and sometimes though that can give the writer and the writer's agent a chance to say, well, if you want this book out in a year, you're going to have to pony up some advance money so that because time is money, and if I've got to give up some work time or cut back or do whatever I'm going to do to get this book done, I need something to compensate me for that time.
Right. Yeah.
And depending on how successful the book is and how much if they take a look at it and say, well, we can only afford to give you this, or we're only going to offer you this, then you say, then we need to negotiate because it'll have to be a year and a half then.
Yeah.
It is a negotiation. All of life is a negotiation. And if you've got a good relationship with a publisher, they understand, that you can't drop everything and just write 24 hours a day. That's not realistic. So
we're just trying to capitalize on the excitement from that first book. I mean, that's
right.
all that is. Yeah.
Yeah, and so again, I fall back on if you know that that's too quick, then if you haven't totally storyboarded the book and you can jump in and produce a chapter every 2 weeks or something like that, then you set up a plan to stay in touch with your readers and let them know that it's coming.
Yeah, good advice. All right, all. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.